68%, 67%.
Okay, so we are now live.
Hi.
I should have asked this before we went live. Do you have any slides that you wanted to share?
No,
Okay. That's a lot easier because now I'll be scrambling.
I I've already told you my experience with this particular app, so I didn't want to.
Jinx it even further. Oh gosh. Well, the good thing is, we're live on the event because what's happened to me before is just because of tech and I didn't know how to use Riverside. So I went live, but I wasn't live to the event. It set up a different event. So everybody who had RSVP'd was like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "I'm online," but it was two separate destinations.
Events. Oh, I'm never going to do this. It's not going to do. I'll be in another country, another time zone. You'll be like, um,
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
yeah.
I can see we've already got five people online. So
Hey,
welcome. If you
five
could drop in the
people.
chat where you are joining from, we'll give it a couple of minutes because 1 o'clock is usually handover time. So if people are in between meetings and things, then we'll get started.
Mhm.
Just give some time. Sorry for my background noise. I'm on site in London. I had some meetings this morning. So apologies. I will mute myself when Nana is talking so that you can hear all the richness. So for those who are just joining, we're just giving it a couple of minutes for people to move between meetings. Feel free, grab yourself a water, a tea, your food, whatever it might be. So for those of you who are joining for the first time, and Nana, FYI, there's a tiny bit of a lag between when we talk and when it's streamed. So if you
Mhm.
ask a question, we'll just have to give that extra bit of time because they haven't heard at the time you've delivered the question. We'll just give it 1 or 2 more minutes and then we will jump in.
Cool. I thought it was going to be sunny today. Anyway.
Why did you think that?
Well, because I'm delusional, I think.
Do you know what? There's something to be said about waking up with hope in British weather, you know? It shows me that you're a really resilient.
Just like the British weather, resilient. Um, oh dear. No, I don't know why. I think I saw a crack of blue sky. I was like, yeah. Yeah, it quickly disappeared. So here we are.
Okay, so let's jump in. I can see there's 10 of you on, so we'll jump in, and as and when people want to join, we will they can do so. So, welcome to the second episode of How Business Change Really Happens. And this is a series that I kickstart to talk to people across industries who are transforming their areas of work, their organizations, their sectors, transforming lives, and just understanding what's their approach. So, I just want to apologize. I do have a bit of background noise as I am on site in London. I did have some meetings this morning, but hopefully it doesn't interfere too much with the quality of this recording and you're being able to hear. So today I have Nanna Sowenya with me, and I'll let her introduce herself. And I've got so many questions that I want to ask. Please also feel free to drop your questions in the chat. The one thing that I will say is the reason why I invited Nana is for me, she's somebody who practices systems thinking in everyday life. So for those of you who are in the more corporate spaces, systems thinking for us, and I'll say us because I do still consider myself quite a corporate, it's something that we are enamored by now and we're trying to bring to our organizations, but it's very bitty and it's not throughout our organizations in the way that we would hope. However, the way that Nana works and the way that she's thinking, she's really transforming industries and businesses for Black and Brown women. So, in real terms, this is not just about policies that nobody will ever see. This is about transforming people's lives. And I really wanted to invite her here to share her wisdom, her approach, so that we can glean something from it. That being said, Nana, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nanna Sowenya, and work. I have an a company organization called the Omega 7 Global, and the whole basis of this organization is to create systems that give actual, tangible, and efficient results and solutions specifically to women. Um, Mainly because of the fact that I noticed that a lot of the systems that we are in are not fit for purpose or defunct or needing to be reassessed. And what I find is that a lot of times we don't have the openness or the capacity to do that at the root level that causes actual change. My background and the reason why I said to Nisi when we first started talking, why do I think like this? It's been a gift or a curse, depending on which side of the fence you sit on. Since I was very small, when I would it um, there's a lot of pattern recognition in my life. There's a lot of asking the questions about why a certain thing is working this way or why everybody's using this formula to get to the result that looks like is not the right result for the situation that we're in or the right solution. And then having spent a lot of my adult life in Mexico, working in understanding, researching, and investigating a really serious issue, which is, in plain terms, child sex trafficking, but in more complex terms, commercial sexual exploitation of children, and the reasons why, it's a really difficult problem to solve. And so, what you cannot do is try to address it from the level of, oh, people just need to stop being bad and stop doing that, or people just need to be more aware of the situation. You need to go further into why this system exists and how you can change it for the better. So that's been my life for most of my adult life. And so, yeah, that's me. And I think everything that I think about is in a system. My home environment is a system. If you are a friend of mine, you are part of a particular system, unfortunately. Um, my friends talk about that. Everything that I do, everything that I see the system, I see whether or not it works, whether it works for me. Sometimes it doesn't work for me, but it works for the larger population. That's fine. And sometimes it just doesn't work for anybody, like calling, saying that the UK has four weather systems and it doesn't, four seasons. It's a system that is not true. But anyway, let's not. So yeah, that's me in
Amazing.
a nutshell. Hi.
Thank you. So you go by the mother of, is it all systems or mother of systems? And tell us
The mother of
why.
systems. Yeah, because I guess being a motherhood and mothering and all the mother stuff has been something that's been part of who I am as well. Way before I had a child, um, it's I wanted to be a mother of many. I have one, and it feels like many. Maybe you can relate to that. But why did I call myself the mother of systems? Because not that I am saying I'm the mother of all systems, but because systems rule my life, right? Everything that I think about in, okay, this is a system that requires this kind of input, this kind of change, especially ecosystems. I studied a lot of permaculture. So permaculture is rooted in building ecosystems that thrive and survive by themselves. I see systems and ecosystems more than I see communities, right? Because when you have a system and you have an ecosystem, you can shape it in a way that allows it to thrive rather than just gathering people together in this sort of kumbaya way and calling it a community. So that's why I called myself the mother of systems. It took a long time for me to set because it's quite a big name, right? And I sat with it for like 7 months. I was like, oh, can I live up to this name? And now I'm 46. I'm like, yeah.
Thank you. So tell us a bit about the ecosystems that you are part of. If you give us an overview, because I know there's a lot you do. So if you give us an overview of the ecosystems you're part of, and then maybe zoom into one. What's one ecosystem that you're trying to change at the moment?
Well, I guess in terms of I'm part of how many? Quite a few ecosystems. Um, um, I'm part of funding ecosystems. I'm part of entrepreneurial ecosystems. I'm part of um, less formal ecosystems in terms of like the community-based ecosystems. I'm part of international ecosystems that look at international issues specifically to do with women, etc. Um, and then I find myself, like I said, like my family is an ecosystem. It's not a great one, but yeah, it is. And one ecosystem that I'm trying to change is the funding and access ecosystem here in the UK, right? I think it's time that change was initiated and change is implemented within that for Black and Brown women, and then consequently for all women. So yeah, that's one ecosystem that I'm definitely trying to change.
So let's zoom into that. And I love that I'm part of the Women in Change community, and that's a community with various women who work in transformation spaces coming together to share knowledge, to share expertise, share stories, to be a place for leverage as well in terms of tapping into opportunities. What's the challenge? What's the biggest challenge that you currently see in the funding space that maybe is a blocker for Black and Brown women?
Oh, I think the biggest challenge is assuming that there is finance or access that is being deliberately withheld from you, right? I think the biggest challenge is myths about how funding operates, how finance operates, especially when it comes to business, and those things need to be addressed. Um, And so when it comes to creating access, when it comes to creating access, a lot of people see it as, oh, this is the one solution. If this would just work, then it's fine. but actually it's about how you understand the system you're in to correctly, not how your personal opinion of the system when you're in, but actually how you understand the system you're in, so that you can take the action that leads to change. Um, so yeah, I think those are the biggest myths. And as somebody who has created a grant fund for Black and Brown women, I'm still a huge advocate of just not applying for this grant for the sake of it. You know, I think so. Yeah, um,
Okay. And
yeah,
you
I
know what?
think that's where I sit.
Thank you. I love what you say about myths because when I first started posting on LinkedIn, and this is me posting from the ecosystem of change management and being a change manager, the first thing that I set out to do was to bust myths because I was like, actually, we cannot show up in a way that best serves the organizations that we are here to serve if we have
Mm.
these misunderstandings, these labels, and these limiting beliefs sometimes about who we are as individuals,
Mm.
who the system is. We can't show up in our best way possible if we don't have that clear view. So, how do you see those myths around the funding space impacting Black and Brown women?
Um, Daily, consistently, badly. Um, and when I talk about the funding space, it's also about how you get money to you. Like I've had two meetings today with two separate women, and from both of those things, those meetings, the clear one example is, know your worth, set your value. The customers that want that are for you will come to you. That's BS. That is BS. Why is that? Because value is set by demand, not by you knowing your worth. Do you know what I mean? Or another thing that's been going around recently is start with yourself. That's also BS. Because what if the yourself that you're starting with, um, what if the yourself that you're starting with cannot do the thing that you think you can do, right? Or does not have the capacity to do the thing you think you could do. Also, when it comes to funding and money, a lot of women think if I sell a product, that product should then sustain me, right? When actually the large amount of businesses, what's it called? The large amount of businesses, sorry, just doing duties here. The large amount of businesses are funded by revenue and debt-based finance. So, yeah, those myths need to be addressed and addressed in a way that even though it's painful to hear, it alleviates and saves you a lot of hassle, right, when it comes to funding. Yeah. Um, People test products before they sell them. A lot of us don't. We're just like, this is a great thing. I'm going to do it. And they don't test the market to see if it's actually something that people find valuable. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So,
So, if you were to recommend, if you were to recommend to Black and Brown women, but people more generally, if they are thinking about starting a business, entering a new system, as it were, what would you recommend the first steps that they should take should be? We've looked at their mistakes. What does good look like entering?
good looks like knowing where you are financially, right? The first step you should do is create an honest diagnostic of where you are first financially, and secondly, in capacity, right? That's your first step. Before you think of anything else, you need to understand what this is going to cost you and whether or not you have the capability to see it through. It's all well and good. We can all create a budget. Okay, you've created that budget. Do you know and do you understand where that money is coming from? Consistently, continuously. Because to think that you can only rely on your product for your growth is not good business sense, right? So that is the first place. And that first place also requires you to understand where you stand financially in terms of your credit score and your access to finance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you still there? Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm still
I
here.
thought my
Sorry.
internet had dropped. Sorry again for my background noise. Okay, so now I want us to move on to influence. So one of the things that I'm big on is that in order to kind of drive any real change, there's some influencing, there's some nudging, it's bit by bit, it's not once, all at once. What's your approach to influencing change? And since we talked already about the funding space, let's stay there. What's your approach to uh, transforming that funding space? What are you doing, and how do you think about kind of your approach in influencing that transformation?
A very unconventional approach is hand holding, right? I think I've mentioned that to you before. People need a lot more hand holding. And a lot of times when people are giving advice about changing things, they just want to list the three lists of things that you should do, go do it, right? That's a terrible assumption that people know how to implement those three lists of things that you're saying, especially when you're coming from a very different place than where they are, right? So hand holding is one. Secondly, the way I build influence is to create tools and tangible resources that they can actually hold on to and use, right? It's all well and good. I can sit and tell you, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. But it's taking away from the fact that, or it's assuming that everybody is starting from a place where they can or where they know how to do. And one of the things that you will notice is that from ideation stage to implementation stage, or a lot of people miss those processes, right? Miss how to create a system that allows you to get from ideation to implementation. So a lot of women sit on products they've built, sit on things, and they do not implement the actual getting it out there because they're not being given the steps, right? And so, and also, I think one of the things that I've stayed away from, and it's really difficult because I have so much to say, is trying to convince people that I know what I'm talking about. And again, just creating the resources that allows them to see that I know what I'm talking about. Because there's a lot of people saying they know what they're talking about, but you follow their advice. And, today I had a conversation with my first meeting was with somebody who was like, I'm doing all the things, but it's not working. And my first question was, what are the things? What are the things that you're doing? And she listed off all the generic things that women are told to do that will not get them anywhere, you know. So yeah, for me, influence is about not necessarily about yapping away about what you think you know, but it's about seeing the root of the problem and creating things that people can actually use and giving them and hand holding them, giving them the baby steps to be able to do that. And as women and as intelligent women as well, we don't like to do baby step things. We need to let go of our egos, because otherwise we're costing ourselves money unnecessarily. And I think that's silly. Um, like, so I don't use a stronger word.
No, I completely agree. But then it begs the question. So for people that are listening now and they're thinking, I want to up my game in influencing people. I know exactly what you mean about hand holding and giving people steps. How do you know what steps people need to take? How did you create the tools that you've created to help people? Was there like a period of research that you did? How do you get a better understanding of where to meet people?
Well, what I did when I started this whole grant fund is open my calendar to as many women as wanted to speak to me. And in every conversation, there were patterns, consistent patterns. Everybody had the same issue, everybody had the same problems, everybody had the same, even though they were doing completely different things, there is a line. And then when it came, one of the things that helped is the data analysis that we did with the applications. What do women understand about what they're doing, how they're building? What is their clarity or lack, or where are they lacking in places where, and why is that, right? And then that helps. And then I sat on the interwebs for ages and listened to women, like, just, I just stalked women that said they knew what they were talking about, or women that were starting their businesses and the things that they were struggling with and all of those things. And again, the patterns show. Where it is, the patterns show. So that's where I got it from. And I was like, okay, everybody's really struggling with this. Everybody's starting, and I've said it many times, everybody's starting 5 steps ahead of where they should start, right? Create your brand, get your thing. No, no, start with your credit score, you know, start with your start with your capacity. Start with, do you have you done the research enough? Have more than 100, have more than 100 people, have more than 200, have more than 500 people shown interest in what you're doing or your product? Or did you just do it in your little group and everybody was like, yeah, we'll support you? And that meant that you started a business, So, and that's what I find a lot, unfortunately. So yeah, it's very common. It's crazy. People, whatever, wherever they are in the industry, that's what you find. The same patterns of, did you start where you were supposed to start, or did you start 5 steps ahead?
And I think, do you know what? What you said about pattern recognition really stands out to me. A couple of things came to mind as you said this. Number one was like when people want to start a diet, it's always extreme. It's not like, oh, instead of having, I don't know, 5 pieces of chocolate, I'll cut it down to do. It's like, no, I'm going to cut out all sugar. And then you end up getting into this loop of an unsustainable loop. You can't stick to the change that you've done. The second thing that came to mind is in organization. So for those of you who are new to me, I work in organizational change, helping move cultures and processes along via storytelling and other things. But number two, so when I'm working in those environments, it's always the focus is on the flower, the thing, like, oh, let's
Yeah,
get this new narrative out. Let's
yeah,
have a road show. And it's like, hold on a minute. Let's look at the policies that you've got. Let's look at where your leaders are showing up and what they're not
yes,
showing up and what that says,
yes,
So
yes,
this seems to be
yes.
like a culturally prevalent thing. And I don't know if it's just in the West. I imagine it's not. I imagine it's global. I do a lot of work, but I imagine
Um,
to different degrees. Go on.
I think it all depends on the kind of system you live in. Give you an example. For instance, in Mexico, if you want to open a shop, you need to go to the shop where you can get the stuff for the shop to build it yourself to open it, right? In the UK, if you want to open a shop, you can just get a shop. And do you know what I mean? Processes, everyday process. If you want to get a fruit juice in Mexico, you're going to go to a fruit stand, right, where they express the juice for you. If you want a fruit juice here, you're going to go to a supermarket and get the thing done. And so what happens is that you get used to having, being steps ahead of where you need to, because your constant everyday life isn't about, if I need to go to this thing, I have to do these steps first, right? Everything comes easy. And so that translates into systems, into organizations. People are like, why doesn't this work? Well, I remember one thing that used to happen when I came back from Mexico recently. I'd be on the phone and I'd be on hold. I'd be on hold for 5 minutes and somebody come back, I'm so sorry to make you wait. And I'm like, wow, in Mexico, I could be waiting an hour, and nobody would apologize because that's just how long it takes. And it shifts your understanding of how to wait, how to process, how to do things. And I think it's a cultural thing in the society. If you're living in a far more developed or easily accessible society, you get used to thinking that things are going to be 1, 2, 3 steps and you're there, right? And so that's what I believe is the difference here. Having lived in another country where you know you've got to start from the very beginning, you know, yeah,
Yeah, I love that point that you made because I hadn't really thought about it like that. Again, I don't know why my mind always goes to food, but here we are at food again. It just reminded me. Like, is it 5 years ago or 10 years ago? If you wanted McDonald's breakfast, you'd have to get up and go. Like, we didn't have Uber Eats. How old is Uber Eats and all these delivery apps? Okay, definitely 10 years
Five,
ago they
yeah,
weren't
five
around.
years, I think. Yeah.
So you had to be a lot more intentional about kind of eating fast food, and in your mind you'd go through all the steps and really reconsider. And
Yeah.
you hear that expression, like in the West, certainly we're in a microwave society. It's like everything we want
Mm,
it quick, we want it immediately. And now I
mm,
love that example that you've given because we do see it in business, don't we? And we do see it when people are starting their entrepreneurial endeavors. So that
yeah.
being said, I want to move us on to talk about visibility. This is something you and I have gone back and forth on quite a lot, and it's such a kind of varied topic.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how important is visibility if you are trying to make a change? So, whether that change is starting a new business, whether it's rewriting policies, and feel free to bunch it. You might say, oh, for visibility, it's this, for that, but give us an overview. How important is visibility when you're trying to make change?
It all depends on what you consider visibility to be and whether or not that visibility actually creates change, right? I'm going to say something really, really big here, right? As Black people, we are very visible. We are visible in this country. We are visible on the news. We are visible in sports. We are visible in creative things. We are visible, visible, visible. Do we have power and leverage where we need it in this country? We don't. We don't, basically. We don't. So that then really questions why people say you need to be visible. As a Black woman in a setting, right? Does your visibility create benefit for you or does it create obstacles for you? The kind of visibility that a lot of people say you should be part of. Does it create benefit or does it create obstacles? That is the question, right? So let's start with the corporate side first. If you learn how to manage up rather than showing, right? You know what managing up is, right? Doing the thing exactly. If you learn how to manage up, you become visible in the right way to the right people, right? If you just show up in your best, you know, you're not doing the visibility. That's what visibility is in a corporate setting. You manage up, right? Um, so when it comes to us as as showing ourselves as visible, it's really important that we understand that the types of visible that you need to be in different settings is what you need to grasp, right? Um, for me, when it comes to being visible, like for instance, nobody knew who I was before I started the Fundhership Grant, and we were a small community. Why did they not know? Because I wasn't here, right? I wasn't here. And I understood the pitfalls of starting a grant fund for Black and brown women in the UK when nothing like that has ever been done, right? So I had to research and understand what I needed to do to get visible. And what I needed to do was connect with the women who were needing this, help them understand that I'm in the same place as them, help them understand that I've been through the same stresses as them, and then build from that. So the first iteration of my website, for instance, was full of butterflies and dragonflies and all this super positive talk, right? Which was really important. Um, and I was like, this got people interested. Now I'm looking at corporates and funders, etc. If you use my website now, it speaks their language, right? because now I'm managing up, because I've gotten the following I need. So now I'm managing up. So visibility, when people use that word, maybe they think it's just about you, people seeing you there. But if people seeing you and every time they see you, they are irked by you, then it's not in your best interest to be visible. Do you know what I mean? It isn't in your best interest to be visible at all. It's it's in your best interest to be visible to who needs to see you to get you where you need to go, right? And let me speak for women that I know more, black women, a lot of black women in corporate, go to work, do the hi, go home. I'm not friends with you guys. I don't do this. I don't do that. I don't, and then don't understand that Bob, who doesn't work as hard as you, got the promotion because Bob goes for pints. Bob's managing up. Bob's visibility. Bob doesn't have to prove himself by staying hours. Bob doesn't have to. Do you know what I mean? And when you understand the system that you're in, you'll understand how to be visible. In the UK, if you do not have the wherewithal to manage up, especially in the corporate world, you're screwed. So yeah, that's what I think about visibility.
Yeah, no, and I
And as a community,
100%.
we haven't managed up.
No, no, we haven't. And I think there's an education piece there. I think part of it is education. I think part of it is maybe confidence as well. And you'll know that I talk about purposeful visibility and, really thinking about what are your
Yeah,
goals, what are your outcomes, how can you show up in the spaces in the right way to kind of further your goals and your outcomes. So I love the nuance that you've put there. What I always say is like there's a difference between being an influencer and a thought leader. It's a different type of visibility,
it's a different type of thing.
you're
Yeah,
yes, and it's really important when you are showing up to understand why you're doing that.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So yeah, that's what I believe about visibility, and I have very strong views about that. Mm.
And is there anything that you think gets oversimplified in like the visibility space or in the influencing space?
Yeah, it's the I think it's the word authenticity, um, because it it feeds into show up as you are, show up as you, show up, right? Um, I was at an event recently during Women's Month when somebody asked that question about showing up as you are to a group of women that were well versed in business in the world, and show up in your authenticity as your authentic self. And they were so confused because they were like, we show up how our clients need us to show up, because that's common sense. If I need a client, if I need a client and my client needs me to show up, and this is a big, we and I know I can show up like that. I'm gonna show up for you. You what? I'm not gonna be like, oh no, this is what I do. This is, it's, and I think that's the thing. For instance, I had a conversation with two women yesterday, and one of them asked, you know, I need to think about my brand. I need to think about this. What's the best thing? And I said, the best thing you can do in terms of influencing is relatability. And not relatability as in you're telling everybody your business about everything. But if you are able to be relatable to the people in tiny ways, it allows for them to connect with you. Aspirational content is there for those who love it, but the thing that will get people to be on your side is you being relatable, right? And again, it's not about, pulling on people's heartstrings, but it's just about and being relatable means that you're comfortable enough in yourself to allow yourself to be that. And I think that is oversimplified in terms of in the influencer space, but even in like the larger space when it comes to change, right? Real change is expensive. Real change will cost you something, right? And so for you to be like, yeah, no, just you need to take into consideration what change needs to happen and what it's going to cost you, right? The tension it's going to cost within yourself or within the people around you, right? The culture that it's going to create when it comes to change. If you do not have a foundation of implementing change within your organization, all of a sudden thinking that because you've got a great new system that's going to work for people is wrong. I had to learn that the hard way. Can I give you an example? So in Mexico, change thought is not the strongest, um, because people are educated, as the education thing, educated into being like lower workers or middle management workers, and so the innovation of things doesn't really happen. So I was working with an organization, and there was a table, and I'll call the thing a table just so that it's easier. There was a table that was blocking the entryway to the door, right? There was a table that was blocking, and it wasn't stuck. It wasn't too heavy, but the table had been there forever. So when I assessed it, and I was like, oh, we could move the table and everybody can get past without scraping themselves. You don't have to crawl under the table. You don't have to crawl over the table. What the responses that I got was, can you guess the responses I got? We've never
They don't
changed the
mind or they
table.
hadn't seen it.
We've never changed the table. Table's always been there. I'm not the one to talk about changing. Do you know what I mean? Like the idea of changing was so terrifying. I was like, but can you see that if we shift the table, it doesn't take up any space. It doesn't actually. It's in the place it's supposed to be. Yes, I can see that, but that's not what we do here. We don't change the table. If somebody put it there, it's got to be for a reason. We don't change the table. And yeah, you roll your eyes, but this is if you break it down, that's what happens a lot when it comes to change, right? If you do not have a culture of change, if you have not built a process of talking about change that can happen, you cannot implement change. You cannot influence change. You cannot do that. For the grant, I spent 4 months asking the question. I knew the women needed the money. I had to ask them for 4 months and had to ask them to commit and be like, are you sure you need this? Are you sure you want this? This would be like this. You can't, even though I'm a systems person, I understand more than anybody how hard it is for people to implement, understand, and even want to change. So yeah, I think the idea of people wanting change is oversimplified into yeah, just put it in a nice package and they'll say yes. No, yeah,
Absolutely. And that table situation can be applied to so many different things, and we do that in our own lives, don't we?
yeah.
It's always been this way. And even though it might be inconveniencing, this is the way that I've always done it, because to think about how to do it differently it's a little bit more work. Let's be honest, it's a tiny bit more work, sometimes a lot more, which oftentimes we're just not open to. So I'm aware we're fast running out of time. If you've got any questions, could you please drop them in the chat? I can see some people are saying that they have to leave, but thank you. Whilst we're
Oh,
waiting to see if there's any questions coming through, please, where can people find you? And what
right.
can they find you there doing?
I'm right here on LinkedIn. So you can find me. My name is Nanna Sowenya. I've put a thing in the chat so you can click there. What will you find me doing? Trying to take over the world, Pinky. No, you'll find me talking about building systems outside of the current system that I believe is not fit for purpose. Which system is that? It's our economic system. It's our laboral system. It's our, uh, um, political system. I and what I understand, because to be able to, I believe that one of the things that you must understand to be able to affect future change is to understand the history of what you're working with and to understand history in general, right? And once you do that, you know that change is going to come, right? Um, but how do you prepare for that change so that you're not stuck in a place where I gave an example. I was at the Nuffield Research Center, and I have to say this before I tell everybody where I am, so you understand. And we were talking about send changes and all of that, and I said, why have you guys not just implemented send being taken outside of government institutions and schools and being an independent body that does that, because it solves a lot of problems. Later on, everybody came to me and was like, "Oh, wow, yeah, why do you think that?" And I'm like, "Because there's a bomb coming, right? I can see it. There's a bomb coming because I see patterns." And guess what I'm doing? I've got my hazmat suit. I am, you know, uh, preparing my seeds. I'm preparing. I've got a shelter. I've got a shelter. And what you cannot do is wish away the bomb, because if you see patterns, you can see it coming. So what you find me doing is preparing for the change that is coming so that people can survive, you know. So yeah, you'll find me on TikTok, Instagram, on the website, sometimes on YouTube, etc. But I just want to leave everybody with this: understanding that transition and change is imminent in a really big way, not just in our small circles, but on a global scale, will help you make the right decisions for your life now, you know? So, eat.
Thank you. And what a powerful note to end on. We often say change is continuous now and change is changing, and we need to evolve as people to be able to respond to it. And part of that evolution, actually, I think, is us becoming better at pattern recognition, you know, not just letting bygones be bygones and hoping that, wishing away that nothing's coming. Things are coming and we can prepare.
Yes,
And I'm
yes.
so happy that I've had you here to talk about that. Would recommend that you give Nana a follow so that you can see and experience more of her thinking. This has just been the very top of the iceberg. I promise you, it's a very, very big iceberg. So would encourage you to follow her and connect with her to explore a bit more than that. Otherwise, thank you
Mm.
so much for joining us for How Business Change Really Happens. Thank you so much, Nana, for being here and enjoy the
Thank
rest
you
of
for
your
having
day.
me. Yay. Bye, everybody.